Ria Bond.
Thank you, Mr Chair. I want to take this opportunity to actually thank the House Select Committee that put a lot of work into ensuring that this bill would help and fit with the very purpose that this bill's intention was actually implemented for. I did not sit inside of the House Select Committee on this particular bill, Mr Chair, but I can actually see through the recommendations made that a lot of these recommendations are actually common sense recommendations that can only be helpful to the practitioners, the professionals, and actually the end use, which is the patients and whānau, Mr Chair. I also want to echo what other previous members have said in the House with the questions that they've asked the Minister, and I do look forward to the duration of this bill coming through the committee stage of having those answers given and provided by the Minister. So I want to also just point out that New Zealand First is in fact supporting this bill. And Mr Chair, like previous members have said, I want to add to the fact that there comes a time in someone's life where compulsory assessment and treatment of individuals with severe substance addiction who are totally unable to make decisions about their own treatment, and this bill, New Zealand First believes, addresses this problem. That members of our communities, what they face when dealing with their loved ones who are going through an addiction like these, and for whatever reasons being that they've become addicted, Mr Chair, what they face along with whānau is a real challenge, and we see that in today's world that was very different from the likes of my parents, that the degree of drugs that are being used in our community and society, we have to ensure that legislation that we're bringing through is fit for the modern day life that we now face and our children face in the future. So, Mr Chair, it is a good bill. It is good that the bill is repealing the Alcoholism and Drug Addiction Act 1996. This is well past its use-by date, and we in this House, we must acknowledge, as I said, that addictions have changed over the last 50 years, and so is the way that we treat people with addictions, and the current legislation does present some real challenges for not just family and friends, but also health practitioners when we as a society are dealing with the growing scale of drugs and the problems that we have here in New Zealand. Mr Speaker, family members right around New Zealand become distressed when they are left out of the decision-making process when dealing with the simplicity of actually simply wanting to protect the ones that they love when they cannot make that choice themselves. New Zealand First agrees that the criteria for compulsory addiction treatment in Clause 7 appears to be robust. These provisions target individuals that have impaired informed decision-making choices and will require compulsory treatment. This means that there must be appropriate treatment provided and available to individuals simply because it is actually quite vital that a patient's condition is correctly monitored and it's reviewed, and if the clinician believes that the criteria for compulsory treatment with any of the patients that they are dealing with is no longer required, then the patient will be released, and the aftercare plan, which is critical for the patient's success, can only be a positive outcome. And with this wraparound support, this helps the individual not only deal with actually the secondary effect, which is the addiction itself, but actually helps deal with actually the primary cause of an addiction. And we know from feedback from submitters, there were 39 submitters and there were 15 oral hearings. We know from those submitters that the very challenge that is faced in terms of making sure that not only are we addressing legislation to help with the addiction and substance issues, but we're also making sure that we're wrapping around services with the patients that they can actually cope with the day-to-day life of going back out into society and to be able to reintegrate into their community. So I do want to say too that Clause 4 of this bill is actually, that defies, Mr Chair, what an approved provider is and who actually can be identified under the Health and Disability Services Safety Act 2001 to provide some mental health services. So the recommendations by the Select Committee for amending Clause 4, Mr Chair, actually for us it really made common sense, and we're really pleased to see through the commentary and through feedback that this bill in fact will help alleviate the current challenges that practitioners do have and whānau do have with trying to ensure that people that they love actually get the services and help that they need. So New Zealand First supports this bill.